I am J.R. Payne, and I am Coach to Win.
I knew you were going to be a great coach. I knew you had every single attribute that it takes to be a great coach, concerned with relationships and developing players. If you've been around enough coaches, I think you can spot a fraud, is how I would start this in a
Yeah,
way.
sure.
You're real authentic and your actions match your words and you're very consistent. And I think that means a lot to players. Why is that important to you?
That's very kind of you. I appreciate it because this world we're living in, especially just the transformations of college athletics in recent years, it can be tempting to be something that you're not, to not stay authentic. And for Toriano and myself, we've been doing this so long. We only know one way, which is hard work, be authenticity, start from relationships and build your way up. And honestly, that's just the only way we know how to do it. I don't think we could do it any other way than that.
Where does this I only know one way come from? What's the genesis of that?
Well, what's interesting? We've had a lot of great coaches to sort of model, who we want to be, what we want to be about, what we think works, all that stuff. Interestingly, someone that impacted sort of our way of doing was Coach Peterson, the football coach at Boise State when we were there as young assistants.
Chris Peterson. Yeah.
Chris, yeah.
Yeah.
Coach Pete, we just always called
Yeah.
him. And I've had some incredible mentors and people, but as far as just sort of what works, we looked at what he did, and as far as just recruiting, blue collar kids, no matter what, they had to be blue collar, and they would beat people that they weren't supposed to beat. And so, we always appreciated and valued sort of that model.
I'm amazed that one of your mentors, I'll call him a mentor for now, was a football coach. Because I thought that you were going to say Kelly Graves, your old coach when you were in college, and now is the head basketball coach and has been there for a long time. Very successful program that he runs. I thought you would say Kelly Graves.
Well, certainly my biggest mentor is Kelly Graves. I mean, we talked for an hour yesterday, just kind of getting ready for the season, and has always modeled, he and his wife, when we were very young coaches, modeled that you can have it all. Like I tell people that you can have it all. You can be a great mom, you can be a wife, you can have a great team, you can win, you can do everything. And that certainly came from his example. Yeah.
Is there some key elements that he taught you? Is there some key phrase that he said, you know what? Always remember this. I'm turning him into an old smoker who's 80, but I'm assuming he doesn't talk like that. Some grizzled, old, worn out guy who's just like smoking.
Yeah, no, I think it was just more through actions, just modeling, like what you see is what you get. And if you love who we are and what we're about, then let's go, and we can make this work and we can do great things together. If you're not about that stuff, we're really upfront about it. We're blue collar, we outwork people, and that's not easy. We tell recruits all the time, what we do is hard. It's very hard. It would be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, but I promise you it'll be worth it. And so I think when we're that upfront, early in the process, it allows that, that authenticity to come through. So when they get here, they're not shocked, when it's difficult, like, okay, we talked about this. And
are you trying to weed out the ones that won't work for your program? Because
definitely. Yeah.
And so how do you know? You want these girls to be tough, you want them to be disciplined, you want them to be fearless, but maybe they need a little nudge. How do you convince them that it's okay to be tough and it's okay to be fearless and this is the reward for doing all that? How do you convince them to let go of their inhibitions and just be free that way?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just for us, it's woven into everything we do. Like I said, from the beginning of the recruiting process, we talk about it. We share stories, about players on our team that that's all they had. Like Jalen Sherrod, was one of our best players. She's playing for the New York Liberty right now. They're about to win, go to the finals and doing great. But we talk about players that's all they had was their work ethic, and our recruits are able to see the success that they've had. They see that we've built our program on the backs of those type of players. And so they pretty much just know going in, this is what it is. If you're not about that, then this probably isn't the place for you. That doesn't mean there aren't growing pains that players say, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I want. And then they get here and it's hard and they, balk from that a little bit. But I think we also balance, like, we really love them through everything we do. And so it allows them to feel like, okay, I can do this. Maybe they didn't think they could, but they realize that they can.
Hold on. Before we go any farther, make sure you click that subscribe button real quick and turn on your notifications. All right, here we go. Back to the show. The blue collar mentality is unique to me because it seems like that's something that you adopted when you were coaching. Was that part of your mentality when you were growing up? Because I'm just looking at Payne, but that's not your real name.
Right.
Your dad gave you that name. How did you become J.R. Payne?
Okay, so you remember you and I are a little bit young for it, but our parents certainly remember the show Dallas. And so J.R. Ewing, who was the main character of this show that was very popular in the early 70s, mid 70s, was just this terrible, awful guy. Like, he was a murderer, a cheater, just the worst of the worst. And when I was 2 years old, I was just a bad kid. I was always fighting with my older brother and just this really rough and tumble kid. So my dad nicknamed me JR after J.R. Ewing, and it just stuck. So my whole life I've been JR.
The unique thing about that is that there's no periods between the letters. It's just JR and then that's it.
Yep.
So has anyone ever called you Junior by mistake?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. It's Starbucks. I get Junior all the time. But my real name is Hallie.
So was that Oh, okay. I like that name. What did your parents do? Were your parents blue collar workers?
No, I wouldn't say that. My dad was military. He was an Army and infantry guy. My mom was a professor and ended up being a high school counselor for years. So no, I mean, we were, just a normal average family. But I feel like I kind of carried that mantra, throughout my athletic career. Certainly, I was always pretty.
What I found by doing these interviews is there's a perfect mix that I think creates the perfect coach, or some of the qualities that go into a perfect coach. It's one of your parents was a coach or they were in the military, and the other parent was in some form of teaching, a professor, a elementary school teacher. All of them, everybody I've talked to have always had those elements, and it kind of carries over to the kids. I always thought it was unique. And here you are telling me that your mom was a professor also and your dad was in the military. I'm not surprised by it.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I think they did a great job of striking that balance of, like, uber competitive, but also perspective. It is just a game in the end. So, allowing us the space, my brother and myself, to want to dominate, to want to be great and be the best at everything, but also recognizing that it's also not the end of the world, to not be the best at every single thing you do.
I always consider myself a blue collar guy. My dad was a Mason and he was a cop. And I don't think you can get much blue collar than that. And I was just literally looking at the blue collar mentality, where it all came from. And it started in the 1920s because, the Masons and the tradesmen, they wore blue because the dirt wouldn't get on them. They were identifiable with their blue clothing. So you guys your team should come out in blue jerseys one day, just
and hard hats.
And hard hats. The one element that people leave out with a blue collar is pride in their work. That's the one thing that I think is left out when people start listing off the qualities of a blue collar person. Pride in your work. That to me is paramount to success. You mentioned building relationships. So I'm going to read you something, and I don't want you to blush. Okay. And I'm not going to tell you who it is or where it came from or when it was. And here's what one of your players said about you. She said, off the court, she really cares. And whether you're playing 40 minutes a game or 5 minutes a game, she's, quote, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help you? And just creating that bond with people. It's like you want to run through a brick wall for her. When you hear that, how does that make you feel?
Oh, it makes me very proud. I mean, that for us is the foundation of everything that we do. We tell people all the time, we could have been preachers or teachers or, we could have been anything, but we feel like coaching was sort of our calling, and still at the root, though, of what we're doing. Yeah, basketball's fun and the big games, big crowds, all of that is cool and fun. But at the root of what we're doing, we're trying to build young women, and challenge them and support them, through these collegiate years, to be the best, the strongest, most capable women in the world. So that makes me very proud that our players would say that.
Is that how you know you're doing a good job, when you hear something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the wins, everybody talks about the basketball, like the wins and the Sweet 16s and all of that. It is awesome. Like it's an incredible accomplishments. But, when we have players calling us 5, 10 years after they've graduated because they need advice or need support or
Hmm.
they're getting married or, the life stuff, that's definitely the most rewarding.
Everywhere you've been, you've turned around a program. Somebody has recruited you, hired you to turn around their program. You've had success. Every job that you've had, they've kind of given you a losing team and you've had to turn it around. So when you get into that environment, when you get into that facility, what's the first thing you're looking at? Are you trying to really identify what the problem is, what the root of the issue is? And then what's your process that you use to fix it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to give a ton of credit to Coach T. He and I have coached together for a long time, and everywhere we've ever been, we've built it together. We've had different assistants and stuff, but he plays a huge role in what we've done.
And just
Um,
for the record, not to cut you off, Coach T is your husband,
he
right?
is,
Let's
yeah,
okay, he's
he
your
is
husband. Okay. All
pretty
right.
great. Yeah. I honestly, I don't know. I think we're like a glutton for punishment. Like we just have always believed that we could win anywhere, and so really we don't necessarily care what's happened in the past. Like say Colorado, for example, when we got here, we didn't really want to hear
Yeah.
about what went wrong, why are we in last place? Like none of that really mattered to us. We sort of came in with the mantra of this is who we're going to be. If you like that, if you're about that, great, jump on the train and let's go. If you're not about that, you probably need to find somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
And it's funny because so when we first got here, we had 2 sophomores on our team that were really good. One of them is still the all-time assist leader at the University of Colorado. Her name's Kennedy Leonard. And before we got here, those 2 kids had put their names in the transfer portal and were getting ready to leave. And so I, of course, am trying to recruit these kids and keep them here, and because they were really good. And I remember telling Kennedy, we're going to win here no matter what, whether you stay or whether you go, we're going to win. And I did say, now we'll win a lot faster if you stay, but no matter what, we're going to win. And I remember she called her high school coach and was like, can you believe she said that to me? Kind of saying take it or leave it, and her coach was like, yeah, that's the type of coach you need. You want someone with that confidence and desire to help you be a part of building the program. But yeah, no, we just come in and we're like, this is who we're going to be. We're going to be tough. We're going to outwork people. And that's always worked for us.
Do you find that it's harder motivating players now than it was, I don't know, call it 10 years ago?
Um, it depends on the player. I really think that there are still players out there that want to work, that want to be about, pushing and being pushed to be better. But definitely, I mean, I think everybody would say it is a different landscape right now, and we're not immune to that. So yeah, it's definitely different. But I think if you ask the right questions, if you are really upfront from the beginning, then you can still find the right players that fit that mold.
If you weren't coaching, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh man, I have no idea. What would I do? And I don't know. I guess in a dream world, I would just hang out with my kids. I'd, go to their games and I don't know that
Be
I
a
would.
mom?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's definitely the best job in the world, along with coaching. But yeah, in some way, shape, or form. Actually, coming out of college, I wanted to be a college professor, and before I started coaching, so maybe get into teaching of some sort.
Okay. Do you remember your first job and your worst job?
Oh, honestly, coaching is the only thing I've ever really done. So my first year out of college, like I said, I wanted to be a professor, and
Yeah.
I started my graduate degree, and I was working in a department store as a makeup person, like putting makeup on people and skincare and all of that. So I
But
guess
only half the face, so they would actually have to buy the
yeah, there you
product,
go. Yeah,
right? You only do
beautiful
half the
you are.
face.
Let's get that. So that was honestly just to go to college and or get my grad degree and things like that. But I started coaching 1 year out of college, and I've been coaching ever since. So
Yeah.
I never grew up dreaming of coaching, like it wasn't in the plans, but it ended up, an opportunity, and it's been amazing.
So with kids sometimes today are obviously so impatient and they want to play now. They want it now. They want the opportunity now. You're recruiting them. You can't really make any promises.
Right.
How do you deal with the kids that want to fast track everything?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the individual. I think it's difficult. I think you have to try to set goals, and small goals. So if there, say you have a young player who, for example, let's say last year, Jalen Sherrod came back as a fifth year. She started all 5 years, decided to come back for
Yeah.
her fifth year. Well, to be honest, it didn't matter who it was. We were not going to have a freshman come in and play over her, just because she was that good and that seasoned. And so for a young player, let's say we had a freshman point guard come in that year, setting tangible goals that weren't about playing. They weren't about playing time. They weren't about on court minutes and things like that. But maybe it's development in the weight room, development in her shooting ability or ball handling, or, and trying to find things that are attainable that you can work towards and accomplish. So you feel a sense of accomplishment. But it is very difficult, and it's getting harder and harder, every year, it seems like.
When I was in high school, I went to a high school called Crespi High School in Encino, California. And after our morning workouts, we would go across the street to McDonald's to get some breakfast and probably get kicked out. It's probably how it ended. And every single morning, well, most mornings, John Wooden would be sitting there reading his paper with his powder puff blue socks on, drinking a coffee and reading the paper.
Wow.
And it made me think of some of the things that he said. And I've always wanted someone to translate it for me.
Okay, I'll try.
I'm gonna see if you can do it. Okay, because his opponents are famous for saying they never heard a John Wooden talk about winning. His idea is that you can lose a game if you outscore an opponent, and you can also win a game if you are outscored yourself.
Yeah.
Curious if you could translate that for me.
Yeah, I think I'm actually really similar. We never talk about winning. We talk about if we do these three things, we give ourselves a great chance to be successful. That's sort of the terminology we use. But I think it all comes down to like your core values and standards. We really define our core values. We define the standards that go along with those core values, within our program. And so, let's say our core values are toughness and discipline. If we go out and we win a game, but we lack those things, we're unorganized, we lack discipline in our execution, we're complaining to the referees, which shows a lack of toughness, things like that. It went in the column on the left, it went in the win column, but for us, that's not how we operate. And so that's what I would say, that's not a win for us. We didn't carry ourselves the right way.
I think it has something to do with it's the journey, not the destination, which I agree on. Even when I was in Colorado, my last year, we were undefeated. We only lost one game, was to Nebraska, and it was a horrible game. Nobody played well. And I remember I wasn't as upset as I thought I was going to be because I had met these great people, had all these great experiences. So the memory wasn't tarnished. I guess that's how I'll put it. If somebody saw your team after a game, would they know whether they won or lost?
Oh, I think so, definitely. But also, I think it goes along with Coach Wooden's quote. Like, there's times that we've lost, and we did everything we could. We played hard, we executed. Our opponent was just better than us that day. Shots didn't fall, and they just were better. And I think in those moments, you can hold your head high. We executed, we did our jobs, we stayed together, we were connected. And sure, maybe it's an L to everybody else, but to us, we got better today. And so we prioritize a lot being in the moment. So were we great in the weight room today? Great, awesome, we won. Were we kind of weak in the weight room? We weren't really pushing ourselves. Then that's a loss, And so we're pretty, day to day. And I think people would recognize that.
How important is attitude for you and your team?
Everything. We talked. In fact, on the circle yesterday, on the stretching circle, we were talking about. I said it's a great day to have a great day. And what that means to me is we control our response, and I'm sure Coach Wooden has quotes about that as well. But just no matter what's going on in our lives, we get to choose how we respond, and nobody in the world controls that. And so I think, attitude is a choice, and we talk about that a fair amount.
Do you have any pet peeves, any non-negotiables for your players?
Quitting on plays, stopping on plays will absolutely drive me bonkers. There's not a lot of things where we'll say touch a wall, meaning take your butt up the stadium stairs and, go find a wall to touch. But quitting on a play would be a big one. We being a bad teammate, being pouty, being mopey, like the things you're talking about, attitude. You control those things. So who cares? You made a mistake. You dribbled off your foot. I've seen Michael Jordan dribble off his foot. Fix it, So I would say, yeah, attitude and definitely quitting on a play.
If you could build the perfect player, it's kind of a loaded question when I think about it. If you
Yeah.
could build the perfect player, what would they have?
We love players that are intrinsically motivated. You know, a lot of kids grow up playing and they start loving it, but then, it sort of ends up being a job and they're only playing because their parents want them to play or, things like that. Those players don't really work here because it's too much work, and so intrinsically motivated, someone that's not afraid of work, hard work, blue collar, one more rep, doing more than your opponent, that kind of stuff. And then someone that is a great teammate. I would say
Yeah.
those are the three things. So we're watching that stuff. Like when we're at a high school game or a club game, I'm watching every time they get pulled out of a game or how do they approach their parents or their teammates, after the game, that stuff matters.
Yeah, I always wondered when you go to all these tournaments, if you don't really know the person and maybe they're not having a good game, but you've heard a lot about them, how aware are you of their body language?
100%. It's huge. Yeah, it's absolutely huge. Because again, it's a controllable, so the referees are probably going to be bad. So who cares? Find a way to work around it. But yeah, body language, attitude, effort, quitting on plays, that kind of stuff are huge for us.